Hey, what's going on, guys? This is BunnyMuffins. I have the tier list for TFT for patch 11.19 for week 2, and we are going to go over how to play every single one of these comps and what I think is the best right now. So starting at the top, we have Abominations, Aphelios, and Invokers again. These are like clearly just like the most played by the best players, and they do like pretty decently. They're not going to do the best, but like you could go them like in a lot of your games, maybe like 15 out of 20, for example. In the A tier, we have a couple bit of like a mix-up. So we have 2 of the 4-cost carries with Draven and Sentinels, but we also have Reroll Hellion and Reroll Yasuo. So Hellion is a very popular build right now because a couple players are pretty much just spamming it, especially in North America. And just because they said they're gonna do it, everyone is like playing it now, just because they are. I think they're pretty good. Once you hit Kled 3, it is pretty unstoppable. Like, you can't deny that. But it's just hard to hit, and if you are contested, like you probably are going 7th and 8th with the guy you're contesting it with, unless one of you guys magically hits Kled 3. In the B tier, we have Vayne Reroll, Dawnbringer Karma, Assassins, Cavalier Cannoneer, Reroll Dawnbringer, Kayle Knights, Skirmisher, Reroll Legionnaire, Redeem Velkoz, and Varus. Lots of different comps. So my favorite personally, it's gonna have to be the Vayne Reroll. I've been playing this a ton, and the reason why Vayne Reroll is really good right now is because everyone's going for Hellion. So when they're going for the Hellion build, you just go for the Vayne build, and they're taking all the 1 cost out of the pool, which means Vayne is easier to hit, because the more reroll players there are, the easier it is to hit like your specific reroll. And that's just how like the game TFT works. So I've been having a ton of fun with this comp, and also no one goes for bow on the first carousel except for me. I'll go over this more in a future video. I just hit Grandmasters really recently after like not playing for a super long time. And yeah, the climb has been like super easy just because I've been doing bow starts and no one else does it. But I'll get into how to do that in that future video. So if you guys are interested in that, go ahead and subscribe below to get notified. Dawnbringer Karma, this is my go-to ability power composition. I suck at playing Abominations, but more on that later. Assassins, you need like a lot to make them work, but let's get into how to play everything right now. So Abomination, Heimer, Velkoz, or Zyra, like no surprise here. Again, like you look at the rank 1, rank 2, rank 3, like rank 1 through 5 players in every single region, there's going to be at least like 2 or 3 guys who are playing a lot of Abominations, and it doesn't matter what carries they use. They're playing Abominations plus an ability power carry. So yeah, super strong comp because, I mean, you just get such a strong mid game that you're going to be like 80 life by the time stage 4 hits, and you're just going to destroy everyone because of that. And after that, you have 3 different options for your carries using the same front line. And that just means if you have like the chance to go for a 4-cost carry, you go for that. If you go for a 3-cost 3-star, you go for that. And if you could go for a 5-cost, you go for the Heimerdinger. They all pretty much use the same items, like ability power and a Spear of Shojin is really all they need. But yeah, this comp is really good. You just get early Abominations, tank items for Abominations, and then yeah, the AP items for whoever your carry is. Aphelios, this is like one of my favorite 4-cost comps right now because I personally start bow. Whenever I don't get a reroll comp, I just default for Aphelios carry because he uses Rage Blade and Giant Slayer, which are both really effective on him. And then like favorite attack damage item for me is the Death Blade. You could go IE, you could go Bloodthirster, tons of different options for him. So he is very flexible in terms of items. You really just want the Rage Blade. That's really the only like requirement, I would say, but you could even get away without that, I've seen sometimes. For tanks, Rel, Sejuani gonna be your go-tos. I like either the 4 Nightbringer or the 2 Nightbringer build. The 2 Nightbringer build, you just run Aphelios and Diana. You take out Lee Sin and Sejuani and add in Revenants. That's a really strong build too. But whatever you hit is what's gonna determine what front line you're using. So you really just need Aphelios 2 and then whatever front line you hit. In this picture right here, we have Ironclad, Cavalier, and Knights, but again, if you hit the Revenants, play those instead. Next comp we have is Invokers. Oh, and by the way, guys, for all these S tier comps, you're gonna do like standard leveling because you're going for expensive carries. So you just want to maybe stabilize a little bit at level 6 if needed. If not, go 7, maybe stabilize there, and then roll. And then you want to ideally roll the most of your gold at level 8 in order to get your 4-cost carry. So like, if I had to picture like a ideal scenario that happens kind of often, maybe on level 7, you get like a 1-star of your 4-cost carry. And then at level 8, whenever you hit it, either at 4-5 or 5-1, you ideally get your 2-star 4-cost carry. If you don't, like, sucks, you know, but like that just is how the game is sometimes. Some other games you might hit the 2-star at level 7, It really just depends on what luck you're getting that game. So next comp we have are the Invokers. This is just like a great late game build. You go for Invoker. You start off with a Karma carry and then transition into like either Heimerdinger or Teemo. Both of them itemize really, really well. Like blue buff's great on Teemo, Spear of Shogun's great on Heimerdinger. So if you started with those mana items on your Karma before, just swap them to whichever 5-cost carry that you hit. And then you just play the expensive front lines with the Garen up front in order to reduce everyone's magic resistance. Next builds we have are the A tier. So Forgotten Draven, let's start off with him. There's some goofy positionings that people have been doing with Draven. A lot of people like to frontline him, and this is really nice if you are going to really pay attention to positioning every single round. I, for one, am too lazy to do that. I don't know about you guys, so I tend to put him on either the 3rd row or 2nd row, depending on who I'm facing. But definitely do try out the frontline build. So you'd put him like where this Aurelia would be in this picture here. And a lot of times he just doesn't drop an axe when you put him in the front line, which really, really increases his damage by a ton. So that's why people are doing it, in case you all were curious. But 2nd row, I prefer a little bit because you get some of the benefit of not dropping axes, but you also don't have to like sweat your positioning every single turn, because sometimes we don't have time to do that. But I have here the Forgotten build with the attack speed items on Draven, and then the Legionnaire build with the attack damage items on Draven. You always want a mix of critical strike, attack speed, and damage with your build. So Forgotten gives a lot of stats, so you want attack speed to amplify that, and then the Legionnaire build gives a lot of attack speed, so you want like the attack damage to complement that. So that's the rationale for both the positioning and the itemizations on Draven, and of course you're doing a standard leveling pattern. Next up we have Sentinels. Just like nothing's changed with this build. Default Lucian, like with any items, probably works. Like literally he uses any item, which is why I used to love this comp. I haven't played this comp too much because I've been forcing like all the bow builds, but if I were playing like a sword start, which is probably the most popular one, like I'd probably be going Draven more often. But yeah, tank items on Galio, attack speed, attack damage, even AP items on Lucian work. And you just go from there, standard leveling, 6 Sentinel, and then add in the Ironclads later. Onto the next build, we have Hellion Reroll. So Kled is going to be the most popular one. That was the build I was talking about earlier. People love going reroll Kled. They call for it in the beginning of the game, and then they just roll till they hit Kled 3. So best items on Kled, you want 3 of these 4 items: Infinity Edge, Last Whisper, Bloodthirster, and Runons. You look at any good player's match history who is like playing a ton of Kled, these are the items you're going to see in like this combination. I feel like my favorite ones gotta be Infinity Edge, Last Whisper, and then the Runons. But some people swear by the Bloodthirster. But again, like if you're getting 3 of these 4, it really doesn't matter like what everything else is, because it's like you're going to be destroying a lot of people with this build. For the rest of your team, I like going 6 Hellion because that gives the most attack speed, and then Ziggs is going to be great if you get a blue buff early. So if you get a lot of tiers, you don't know what to do with them. Like blue buff on Ziggs is going to pretty much win streak you, or not win streak you, but keep you alive until you hit Kled 3. So a lot of times you play 1-cost reroll, such as the Vayne. You bleed out your entire life total before you hit Vayne 3, and then you go on a win streak. With this build, you kind of survive a lot because the Ziggs kills a lot of units if you have the blue buff early, and that buys you a lot of time to get the Kled 3 pretty much unharmed, which means that you have a high chance of winning the game in those scenarios. After that, you go for Kennen 3. Morello is great on him. I like stacking a GA on him after that. Some people like Frozen Heart as well, but Kennen's going to be a great secondary carry for this comp. But really just focus on Kled items, and then the Kennen items second, and then the Ziggs items. If you get them, you get them. If you don't, you don't. You don't really have to worry about him at all. So let's say you're going for Kled, but you're not really getting too many Kleds, but you're getting all the other Hellions. What should you do in that scenario? You could go for the Tristana version down here, and she uses pretty much the same items as Kled, but I will say I do prefer having a Bloodthirster on Tristana. And yeah, with this build, it's pretty much the same thing, except you roll at level 6 instead of level 5. I list them out down here in case you guys want to check that out. This can all be found on my website, bunnymuffins.lol. But on to the next build, we have Nightbringer Yasuo. Nightbringer Yasuo, he's just another default reroll. There are 2 different builds I want to talk about. So the first one is what you see here is the attack speed build. This one is great with Rapid Fire Cannon and Runons, and then third item is just like Handed Justice or Jeweled Gauntlet or something of that nature. But there's also like the Spellcaster build. The Spellcaster build is something like Archangel Staff with Radiant Blue buff, and some people even do like a Cavalier Spat build, which gives him a lot more survivability. So lots of different things you could experiment with on the Yasuo. As for which one is best, it really depends on the matchup. Some comps, he needs the RFC to not get hit by anything. But in a lot of other comps, like, the RFC is useless because they have backline access anyway. So you'd rather have like a Cavalier spat or like maybe the blue buff with the Archangels just to smack everyone before he dies. So it really just depends on who you're facing. But the way to play Yasuo, because you can't really plan around what your opponents go, is just reroll at level 7 for Yasuo 3-star and just hope for the best. Get Sejuani 3-star as well, or Lee Sin 3-star for your main tanks. And then Diana is of course a beast to disrupt enemy Velkozes and everything else in the back line. Now onto the B tier comps. Vayne Reroll again is my favorite. I start with bow. Again, wait for the video that's coming out in a little bit if you want to learn more about how to play with bow starts. But I do go over Vayne Reroll in my reroll video that I'll leave a card in like the top left here or top right. But reroll for Vayne on level 5 because she's a 1-cost unit. Get her 3-star. If you can get Hecarim 3-star, that is great as well. You do that on level 6 usually. I've even gotten Thresh 3-star as well. And these are going to be your main powerhouses. So all the team items on Thresh, all the attack speed items on Vayne, and all the tank items on Hecarim. By far, the best item combo is double Runons plus an attack speed item. The best one's going to be Rageblade, but you could also put in other weird ones as well. For example, if you get like Radiant Guardian Angel, that gives attack speed and gives her some survivability. If you get stuff like even Quicksilver, I've seen work. And also things like Giant Slayer and Bloodthirster are going to be great on this Vayne. Of course, you could go the old builds such as Hand of Justice and Jeweled Gauntlet. Those work just fine too. Hecarim, like, I mean, not much needs to be said. Stoneplate's going to be great because he's pretty much a solo tank up front. Warmogs is going to be good against all the Nunu so he doesn't get eaten right away. And then the Bramble Vest, it's just a great tank item in general, but this could be swapped out for Dragonclaw or another Stoneplate. Alright, let's move on to the next build. We have Dawnbringer Karma. This is like one of my go-to ability power comps. 4 Dawnbringer, 6 Dawnbringer, doesn't really matter which. I do prefer this 4 Dawnbringer version because then you can run 4 Invoker, but oftentimes when I do go for the Invoker board, I do the build that we looked at earlier. So when I do play Karma for the 6 Dawnbringer version, it's normally because I am bleeding out and I just want to play something that's affordable. And the 6 Dawnbringer build is pretty affordable because you run stuff like Riven and Nidalee instead of dropping them for stuff like Teemo and Heimerdinger. But this comp is great because if you have ability power, not many people go for Karma. They all go for Velkoz, so I often find that Karma is pretty free in a lot of those games, at least when I go for Karma. For items, you want 1 mana item. Blue buff is preferred over Shojin, and then double hat, Jeweled Gauntlet, and hat is all going to be fine and dandy. And then for the tank items, Garen, of course, is going to be the main tank. And yeah, that's pretty much all you need for this comp. Get 6 Dawnbringer or 4 Dawnbringer with 4 Invokers, and just go from there. Next build we have are the Assassins. I really don't like this comp because they need so many pieces to actually work. So when you play Reroll Yasuo, who's also a 3-cost, Nocturne's also a 3-cost, Yasuo 2-star is pretty playable. You're not going to just like die randomly because you have a Yasuo 2 instead of a Yasuo 3. The same cannot be said about the Assassin build. Nocturne 2 literally tickles everyone. But Nocturne 3, he starts like slicing through everyone. So there's a huge difference between the two, so if you do not hit Nocturne 3, you are going to go 8th place. Like, there's no ifs, and, or buts about that. You also need a spatula to make this build work with the Assassin Spatula, and then you also need, like, pretty good item Nocturne with good complementary items, too. So those are, like, 3 different things that we listed out. Oh, yeah, and if you go for the Assassin Spatula, you also need to hit a Legendary in Viego in order to really shine, because you can't get 6 Assassins without Viego. So like, there are what now, like 4 things you need to make this build work, which is why it is like not preferred compared to all the other comps that I listed. Doesn't mean it's bad, because when you do hit everything, like, you have a very high chance of winning the game, don't get me wrong there, but like, it is so much weaker at 4 Assassin and it is so much weaker at Nocturne 2 that you really need a lot of Nocturnes before you get into this build. Another common mistake I see with this comp is that, let's say you get a Nocturne during stage 1 from like a creep drop. A lot of people are thinking like, oh, let me force Nocturne from this spot, but that's actually a horrible decision. Let me explain why. Nocturne is a Revenant and Assassin, and all the other Revenants, they're 4 or 5 cost units. What that means is you can't actually get the Revenant buff till like stage 3 or stage 4, and playing Nocturne carry in stage 2 and 3 pretty much means you're gonna lose every single round. You could have like 4 Assassin, you could have 2 Assassin, it doesn't matter what you have. You could even have a Nocturne 2. If you don't have the Revenant buff, he is so much weaker because he just doesn't get a free respawn. So, common mistake I see with this build. So what you actually need to do to play Assassins is do some sort of like attack damage based start. Maybe you could like do a Kled start or do like a Skirmisher start into the Nocturne later, and then slow roll for him at level 7. That's generally how I see him being played to the like highest effect. Pretty much no one forces Nocturne from the start for the reasons I stated before. Next build we have is the Cavalier Cannoneer build. This is the like default MF with Hecarim carry build. And yeah, tank items on Hecarim, ability item and mana regen on Misfortune. Reroll at level 6 and level 7 to get them 3-star. And yeah, just pray you win after that. Next build we have is Dawnbringer, Reroll, Kha'Zix, and Gragas, the Chug Bug build. 4 or 6 Dawnbringer work. I prefer 6, but you know, I've seen some people play 4. And honestly, like, it doesn't really matter. You just need the Kha'Zix 3-star with like good items. IE and Hodge are by far the 2 most important, and then after that, RFC or GA is going to do just fine. Of course, like Radiant items are going to be great on him too. After that, Gragas, just default tank items are going to do fine. And then you add in all the other units you see here because they're going to give the most buffs to your Kha'Zix. You could also run the 4 Dawnbringer build with 4 Assassin if you hit like a Diana and a Viego, because those are pretty good units to just put in. I don't recommend playing 4 Assassins if you play Nocturne, because Nocturne doesn't do anything, whereas Diana and Viego provide a lot of utility. Next build we have is Kayle Knights. I mean, if you go for Rageblade and Deathblade, you don't hit Aphelios, but you hit a random Kayle instead. Switch into the 4 Knights build, and yeah, you'll do just fine. It's not that great of a build anymore. I'm not really sure why, but for some reason, no one really does this that much anymore compared to, like, let's say 1 patch ago. But it's still pretty useful if you hit an early Kayle. Next build we have is Skirmisher Knights. So some people are saying, like, Jax is really good. Some people say it's, like, the worst thing in the world. Not really too sure where he stands. He's probably somewhere in the middle of those 2 opinions. That's why he's in the B tier right now. Like, would I prefer to have an Aphelios with attack damage items? Of course, but you can't always get that. So if you happen to get a Jax build, it really just depends on how much physical damage there is, because as you guys can see, they're all melees and like you're running Ironclad. So if you ever face a Velkoz, sometimes you just get melted even with the Knight buff. So you just have to be like wary about your matchups whenever you're playing this comp. Next build we have is Reroll Legionnaire. This is just another 1-cost reroll build. I feel like it's the weakest of the 3. I like Vayne and Kled a little more, but it's still pretty effective because Kalista, with like any attack speed and damage items, like she does a lot of work, and it win streaks so hard in the early game that oftentimes you just win just by having more HP than other people and everyone else bleeds out and you get like a 2nd place. Next build we have is Redeemed Velkoz. Solid AP build, but like the Abomination one's just better. And then Reroll Redeemed. This one is like, it used to be my favorite, but it kind of sucks now. I've been trying to play it, and like, ironically, Leona got nerfed, but that nerf hasn't actually affected me because I never hit Leona 3-star. So joke's on them for nerfing it, because like, I'm not good enough to hit her 3-star. But it's a decent build. It just doesn't slap as hard as all the other reroll builds, and yeah, I don't know. You bleed out really quickly whenever you play this because Varus is an AoE champion, so he doesn't kill individual units whenever you lose. So sometimes he leaves everyone at 1 health, and then you take like a 4-unit loss instead of like a 2-unit loss if you focus a certain target. So it's just a lot of things that combine into this being like a relatively weak comp to reroll, but it's still like decent if you get it for free, which is like the only time I recommend playing this. That is going to be it. C tier Riven carry, like, yeah, don't play this. I've seen like a couple Riven reroll builds, but like none of them work that well. So you're risking so much trying to hit a Riven 3, and then it just sucks anyways. So I don't know why people are doing that, but yeah, I'd have to ask them. But let's go on to the item carousel priority. This is at the start of the game. Sword is going to be by far the best. All the attack damage builds, Lucian, Aphelios, Draven, all that good stuff, like Kled uses it. And then you could also build like a Spear of Shojin if you go for the Abomination Velkoz build. So Sword is like easily like the best item in my opinion, if you're playing like optimally or whatever. Belt's great because it fits in every build. Bow, I like doing this because I like going for the reroll builds. It's also good because, again, all the attack damage people use this. It's just not as useful as a sword because bow is literally useless in any Karma and Velkoz build. Glove, decently flexible, but not as good as belt. Same with the chain and the Negatron. And then the 2 worst are going to have to be Rod and the tier. So even though Abominations like having the Rod, they focus more on tank items at the start of the game rather than ability power, so that's why these two are rated the worst right now. But again, like, it all depends on your playstyle. I'm used to starting with the bow, and literally no one goes for it. So I get it pretty much every game, and I practiced it a lot, and I found ways to make it work, personally, for me. But if you're going for like super try hard, go for the sword, go for the belt, or go whatever works for you depending on what comps you play. So an idea I can suggest to you guys is look at the top comps and decide which ones you want to play, whether you like them because of the color of their trait, or if you, I don't know, like whatever comps you prefer, just choose like 1 to 4 of them maybe, or 1 to 5, or even all of them, and then just think about which items actually fit into those comps. So for example, if you're doing like Invokers and Abominations, that's going to be like Karma and Velkoz. Like going Rod or tier might not be a bad idea every game as long as you're practiced on it. So just to sum up for this week, S tier, Abomination, Aphelios, and Invokers. A tier, Draven, Sentinels, Hellion, Nightbringer, Yasuo. Let's see how often the Hellion comp is actually going to be played in the World Championship, and let's see how it does if it's contested. Because if it's contested and it still does well, that means like it probably should be in the S tier, right? But from what I've been hearing and from what I've been seeing, like contested Hellion, one person's not going to be so happy that game. In the B tier, Vayne Reroll, Dawnbringer, Assassins, Cavalier, Dawnbringer again, Kayle Knights, Skirmisher, Reroll Legionnaire, Redeem Velkoz, and Varus Reroll. All of these pretty solid. You just need to have a good start for them. And yeah, that's going to be pretty much it for this week. A little bit shorter this week because not too much has changed from last week. But definitely good luck on your climbs, guys, because I've been climbing pretty hard. I took a break this set. I'm sure you guys know that already, but yeah, like for some reason, like things have been clicking recently. So I'll post a video on that. Again, subscribe if you are not already, and hit the like if you enjoyed this rundown as well. But yeah, I will see you all later because I need to go record those other videos right now. So yeah, until then. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe, and of course smash that like button. Each like is an LP I gain before the next video.